Hi guys, it's Grandpa. Good to have you with me again. Today we're going to start chapter 5 in our book. Looks like this. At the top of the page it says chapter 5, and the title of this chapter is Leaving Old House, Leaving Gray House. And at the bottom of the page on this side it has 3737. That's getting right up there. I don't know if you can count that high. You're going to have to know a couple of things to understand this chapter. The first thing is that this story takes place with a farm family, and they have two houses. They have their old house that they used to live in, and they moved out of that house, and it's called Gray House. And it's Gray House because it probably needs paint. It's old, it's falling apart, the windows are probably broken in it, filled with junk. And that's where the mice are currently living. It would be a perfect place for a mouse to live. But the farmer left that house, and he built a new house. And they call the new place New House. So we're going to hear both in that one. Another thing you're going to have to know to understand this chapter is that Poppy in this chapter is going to be holding up and waving a white flag in front of her. Now, if some people are fighting and one person holds up a white flag, can be a white flag or a white handkerchief, a white piece of cloth, that is a sign that means stop fighting, I want to talk. Don't hit me, don't shoot me, don't hurt me. I'm not here to fight, I'm here to talk. So we're going to see Poppy doing that in this chapter today. Chapter 5. For the next 2 days, Lungwort worked on the speech he intended to make to Mr. Okax. He did this in his study, in an old boot that Farmer Lamont had left behind from down on the hall steps. After lining the boot with potato sacking, Lungwort had chewed out a couple of windows, then used a plaid necktie as a curtain to the entryway. He's living inside of a boot. Now and again he emerged, papers in hand. Seeking out older members of the family, he'd cornered them and say, "I need you to listen to this speech." After reading a paragraph or two, he insisted upon knowing what the listener thought. If there were compliments, he said something like, "No, I don't want your flattery. I can't use that, I need hard criticism." When he received criticism, he always argued that his way was the best. Then off he'd go in a grump to make minute subtractions or additions to his text, none of which had anything to do with either compliments or criticisms. While Lungwort prepared his speech, a committee busied itself making a white flag. No one knew whether a flag of this kind was Lungwort's idea or Mr. Okax's demand. Even so, whenever there was such a permission party, as the younger mice called it, a crisp new white flag was carried, so that Mr. Okax would have no doubt as to the mice's intentions. It would be Poppy's job to march along with her father, holding the white flag. Poppy, meanwhile, did what she had been told to do, relating the facts of Ragweed's death to all of her family. Everyone was upset by the story. Being eaten by Mr. Okax was a shared nightmare. Moreover, it happened with some regularity. They were all scared of him. Excuse me. Grandpa had a sneeze. There was considerable tut-tutting, with much whisker twitching. Yet while everyone expressed sorrow, Poppy suspected that few people grieved. Worse were the words of comfort that began, "Well, if somebody had to be sacrificed..." "I don't understand why they disliked Ragweed so much," Poppy protested sadly to Basil the night before she and Lungwort were to go see Okax. "What harm did Ragweed do them?" "Oh, I can think of 3 things," Basil said. "He was a golden mouse and not a deer mouse. He came from somewhere else. And he said things that upset people. You know, like, 'You haven't lived unless you die for something.' Remember when he told that to Old Plum? A soft belly causes softness at both ends." "Yeah, but I like that he was different," Poppy confessed. He loved adventure. I'll never forget the last words he ever spoke to me. They were terribly ironic. What's ironic mean? You know, when the words mean almost the opposite of what you're saying. The last thing he said to me was, "You don't know how to live like I do." What's ironic about that? Basil asked. The very next second, Mr. Oacax killed him. Oh, said Basil. Now, Poppy, her mother began as she brushed her daughter's fur for the final time, above all, do exactly what your father tells you to do. Be respectful toward Mr. Oacax if he takes notice of you. But if he does not, don't fret. Your father commands his attention. Mr. Oacax has great respect for your father. Don't so much as squeak unless you're spoken to. Then be humble and brief. Remember the old saying, mice should be nice. And for heaven's sakes, keep that white flag flying. Above all, sweet Cicely said, remember, it's an honor that you were chosen to go. Yes, Mother, Poppy replied, though what her mother was saying made her feel very uncomfortable. Lungwort appeared at that moment. His hair was slicked down, his whiskers were crispy curled, his tail had been scrubbed to a glowing pink, his thimble hat was set at an angle. Is she ready? He asked his wife. I think so. Lungwort examined his daughter with a critical eye. Fine, he said. A good start produces a good finish. All right, Mother, we should be off. Sweet Cicely gave Lungwort a nuzzle, whispering, Do be careful. Careful is my middle name, Lungwort assured her, and he led the way to the porch. There the whole family of mice had assembled for a send-off. Fireflies had been gathered and now released, giving the moment a festive mood. Poppy, holding the white flag, stood on the foot of the porch stairs. Lungwort scampered atop the old porch rail and faced the crowd. My fellow mice, he began, his paws clasped comfortably over his plump belly, while he surveyed his family with a solemn regard. I am about to leave for my meeting with Mr. Oacax. Need I remind you how important this is? It is a moment for the multitude of mice to memorize. Poppy, unable to make sense of the words, stopped listening. She was searching for her cousin Basil in the crowd. Be certain, Lungwort continued, that I will go forward with your best interests at heart. I have prepared a fine speech that will, I'm sure, convince him of our needs. He held up a piece of paper, wrapped carefully in leaves to protect it. I look forward to returning with Mr. Oacax's kind permission, so that at least half of us can move on to new home. That will be a great day for all of us. At this point, he looked down at Poppy. Poppy, he said, raise the flag. What? The flag, Poppy! The flag! Oh, Poppy lifted the white banner high in the air. Looking at it, all she could think of was it was a flag of surrender. As Lungwort, surrender means I give up. As Lungwort took his place before her, one of the crowd cried out, Hip, hip! Hurrah! Said the others. Hip, hip! Hurrah! Forward! Lungwort cried. He gave a smart nod to Poppy, and they began to march off. The crowd continued to cheer. Poppy had to admit it was pretty grand. When she caught sight of Basil waving frantically to catch her eye, she felt even prouder. Within minutes, however, everything changed. Gray House, with its cheerful lights and all the well-wishers, vanished behind them. The moon had all but disappeared behind clouds that promised rain. No stars were in the sky. The air felt as heavy as wet wool. In the darkness, Poppy had no idea which direction they were to go. "We'll be taking the tar road," Lungward informed her. "Fewer obstructions, more visibility." "Do we have a meeting place?" she asked. "The very tip of Dimwood Forest," her father said, "just on the far side of the bridge over Glitter Creek. Mr. Okax's watching tree. He's there most nights. Can't miss it. It's a huge dead oak." "How come that tree is dead?" "It got hit by lightning." "Was Mr. Okax in the tree when that happened?" Lungwort chuckled. "Poppy, there are those who say Mr. Okax made the lightning himself. He's that kind of bird. Now, my dear, keep that flag up in the air." Poppy tried, but she was wondering what kind of chance they'd have with an owl who could make his own lightning. Marching down the middle of the road made her nervous. Surely Mr. Okax would see them. Would he recognize her? If he did, would he attack? What should she do then? Should she run? Where should she run? Ashamed that she was having such worries, Poppy decided it would be better to hide them. So she said nothing. Still, it was hard to keep the heavy flag high up in the air. "Up! Up! Keep the flag up!" Lungwort kept calling. He was now walking behind her. They had been marching for some time, during which they had exchanged very few words, when the night silence was suddenly shattered by a "hoo-hoo!" And we're going to quit there for now. Come back again next time and we'll keep reading from there. Bye.